A former Chinese police detective has fled to Europe where he told reporters he struggles to sleep at night because of his role in the horrific torturing of millions of Uyghur minorities in China. Here are the details. CNN reports that a Chinese police detective turned whistleblower has given shocking details about how Chinese guards torture Uyghur Muslims in prison camps in China. Speaking from exile in Europe, the former detective said police officers armed with rifles would go to Uyghur communities in China's Xinjiang region and pull people from their homes. The people would be handcuffed, hooded, and told they'd be shot if they resisted. Men, women, and children as young as 14 would then be taken to interrogation centers where they would all be kicked and beaten until they were bruised and swollen, kneeling on the floor and crying. The former detective, called Jiang, told CNN some guards would use iron bars to hit the detainees, while others used chains with locks. He added that some guards saw it as work, while others were just psychopaths. He said prisoners would be shackled to special chairs to immobilize them. Detainees would also be hanged from ceilings, gang-raped, electrocuted, and subjected to waterboarding until they confessed to crimes of supporting terrorism. Jiang said even before his time in Xinjiang, he had become disappointed with the Chinese Communist Party due to increasing levels of corruption. They were pretending to serve the people, but they were a bunch of people who wanted to achieve a dictatorship, he said. The massive scale of the detention center building within China's Xinjiang region may be even larger than previous estimates had suggested. Here's what you need to know. China has built the capacity to simultaneously imprison at least 1.01 million people in Xinjiang, according to BuzzFeed News analysis. This may suggest previous estimates of around 1 million Uyghur and other ethnic minority Muslims being detained over the last 5 years are too low. 347 facilities have been identified as being built since 2016, and as of April 2021, these facilities covered an area of more than 206 million square feet, or around 19.2 million square meters, enough to cover a third of Manhattan. Within the facilities, government documents from 2010 and 2013 indicate cells are designed to hold between 8 and 16 people, allowing between 5 and 7 square meters per person. Those specifications, combined with the total area allocated for detention centers, are how the estimated capacity of more than 1 million people was arrived at. However, previous accounts of overcrowding, plus the existence of 100 detention facilities built before 2016 and not included in the report, could indicate a still larger capacity. According to the BuzzFeed News report, the coordinated campaign to imprison Muslims in Xinjiang began in 2016, initially with schools, hospitals, and other public buildings repurposed to become detention centers. This process solidified into something more sophisticated in the following years as more and more purpose-built facilities were constructed, peaking between 2017 and 2019. As of April 2021, BuzzFeed News estimates this amount of detention space provides the capacity to imprison 1 in 25 of the population of Xinjiang, a relative detention capacity 7 times higher than that of the United States, the country with the highest official prison population in the world. The lives of detainees are full of oppressive practices, according to accounts by 3 men detained in 2017. Detainees must jump out of bed immediately following a wake-up call. They must sing patriotic songs before meals. They must spend up to 23 hours a day inside their cells, and when they walk in corridors, they must walk between sets of yellow lines. The detainees were given hardly any justification for their imprisonment, but they told BuzzFeed they spent about 1 hour a day studying Mandarin Chinese and Communist Party dogma, despite the fact all 3 already spoke fluent Mandarin. Alongside these and many other restrictive practices, BuzzFeed News also details widespread claims of forced labor within the centers. Former detainees told BuzzFeed they were never given a choice about working and were either paid nothing at all or very little. "I felt like I was in hell," one said. Within this relentless system of control, the smallest transgressions, such as speaking native languages, can result in violent punishment. One man detailed being forced to face a window and threatened before eventually being struck by an electric baton. These authoritarian methods of control extend beyond the borders of the centers into the rest of the Xinjiang region. Amid a system of mass surveillance, checkpoints checking ID cards of Uyghurs were introduced, according to one witness who spoke to BuzzFeed. In 2018, BuzzFeed reports that a mosque in one area had its dome and and minarets removed. Around the same time, one ethnic Kazakh woman described how every house was searched. They were looking for things connected to the Islamic religion, like the Holy Quran, even things with Arabic writing. According to the BBC, China says this crackdown on Muslims in Xinjiang is necessary to prevent terrorism and drive Islamist extremism out of the area. It claims the centers it has built are an effective tool for re-educating detainees in a battle against terrorism, and it insists that Uyghur Muslim militants are leading a violent campaign for an independent state via bomb plots, sabotage, and other forms of civic unrest. However, there is little evidence of any kind of well-coordinated terrorist organization within the region, according to a comprehensive analysis contained within the book Global China, assessing China's growing role in the world. Xinjiang has been the subject of Central Asian geopolitical struggle for millennia, according to the authors of the chapter on oppression in the region. However, there have been just 4 clear-cut incidents of premeditated Uyghur political violence against civilians since the 1990s. A vehicular attack and self-immolation in Beijing in October of 2013, a mass knifing at the Kunming railway station in March of 2014, a knife and bomb attack at the Urumqi train station in April of 2014, and a vehicular and explosives attack on an Urumqi market in May of 2014. These attacks, it explains, do not fit China's broad characterization of the region as a hotbed of religious extremism. Broader dissatisfaction and unrest from within the Uyghur minority population has indeed sporadically erupted into violence against police and official targets, according to the analysis in that chapter. However, the crisis, which has been labeled ethnocide, cultural genocide, or even genocide, should be understood not as counterterrorism, but as the convergence and culmination of failed development policies, increasingly aggressive assimilationist policies, and the cycle of repression-resistance-repression that has played out in Xinjiang since the 1990s, the chapter explains. In short, the Chinese Communist Party has pushed for decades to force deeper cultural and economic assimilation in the region, where it has hoped for the country's Han majority ethnic group to take hold, and there has been some pushback against this, including political moves for greater independence, but there is no grand, religion-infused terrorist scheme to justify mass killings and imprisonment. As such, one expert on the situation, Professor Drew Gladney, summarized the situation as a political clampdown rather than an issue of religious terrorism. It is not a question of religious freedom, he told Time magazine. Clearly, there are many possibilities for religious expression that are not restricted in China, but when you cross the often nebulous and shifting boundaries of what the state considers political, then you are on dangerous ground. Compellingly, the religious counterterrorism justification may actually have been substantially bolstered in the early 2000s by the US, according to the aforementioned chapter in Global China, assessing China's growing role in the world. In an apparent bid to court PRC support for a United Nations resolution justifying the U.S. invasion of Iraq, it says, the United States in 2002 problematically designated the East Turkestan Islamic Movement an international terrorist organization, a move that we and other analysts think was incorrect based on the facts. The chapter explains that the East Turkestan Islamic Movement was a group that sought an independent Xinjiang, but effectively ceased to exist in 2003. After it was formalized by the US and UN, the false notion took root that East Turkestan Islamic Movement was a substantial, organized international group responsible for violent acts in Xinjiang. On Sunday, the BBC aired a video from China so shocking that the Communist Motherland's ambassador to the UK was left incoherent during an interview. Drone footage taken from China's Xinjiang province apparently shows numerous Uyghurs with shaved heads who were blindfolded and led off to trains. Does this remind you of anything? Because it should. The BBC's Andrew Marr presented the video, which he said has been authenticated by Western intelligence agencies. He then asked Ambassador Liu Xiaoming what's on all our minds, "Can you tell us what's happening here?" Embarrassingly, the good ambassador had an on-screen meltdown. Liu responded by saying, "Let me tell you this. Have you been to Xinjiang? Xinjiang is regarded as the most beautiful place in Xinjiang." You caught that? Xinjiang is the most beautiful place in Xinjiang. There is a Chinese saying, "You don't know how big China is." Marr replied, "Ambassador, that is not beautiful coverage." Marr then showed the ambassador the video testimony that Uyghur women were forcibly sterilized against their will. In the video, Uyghur woman Zumrat Dawood said, "We offered to write a letter promising not to have any more children, but they refused, saying she must have the procedure, or we will put her name on the study list. You can always be sent back again." We will reproduce Liu's brilliant retort. He says, "The government's governing policy is strongly opposed to this kind of practice, but I cannot rule out, single cases for any country. The single case is a single case. We treat every ethnic group in China as equal. Here, ladies and gentlemen, if you will turn your encyclopedia to the entry of bare-faced lies, you'll find Mr. Liu's face in the illustration. Numerous international watchdogs have pointed out that China has imprisoned about 1 million Uyghurs in its so-called re-education camps. So how does a communist count? 1 million victims equals 1 single cases equals 1 single case. And they say Americans can't do math.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.